Hi, I'm Chris Eischen, and this is the Modern Dad Council. Joining me today, we have Jay Forty of the Greatness Zone and Ready for Life, and I have Eric Lehman of the Game Changer Movement with me. Um, so, the Modern Dad Council meets to discuss important issues around parenting, relationships, and everything else in the world around being a modern dad. And today we're discussing community and what it means to be part of a community because the Modern Dad Council has kind of become a community for those of us who have a passion for making change in the world in a better tomorrow. I do it through parenting and my podcast and Kick-Ass Dad and everything I've done there. And J40 has created some amazing workshops that I've been blessed to be able to teach and share with others. And Eric going out into the world and changing the world of video games and eliminate the violent ones and actually getting ready to launch one of your own, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of speak about that a little bit, Eric, and talk about that community that you've kind of developed and why that's important that you're, creating that community?
Well, sure. I mean, I feel like community for me is the evolution of charity, and so it used to be great to show up and serve, for others, and so what I believe that we're evolving from is we're evolving from for to with. And I feel like with is really, really powerful energy, and it doesn't have the power dynamic and the kind of, I don't know, like the rich person serving the poor person, kind of stuff, or the have serving the have not dynamic. It has this idea of kind of like arms out brotherhood and sisterhood, and just like community building. So I realized recently that my biggest um, contribution to the world is not necessarily what gets done, but how it gets done. So I feel like I I I've gotten a laser focus, well, sort of a laser focus. I'm kind of shifting. I'm like, I'm changing my game, within the game changing movement, and just loving the idea of the how and how do we build community every step of the way. So instead of saying we're going to build this game for you kids, and just have it sort of as a service, what just dawned on me recently is like I want to build a game with the kids that we're serving
Mm.
or that we're collaborating with or building community with. So I'm trying to create the platform so that the first 100 or 1,000 youth who are courageous enough to trade in a violent video game and to change their own game get invited into the creation process itself. So, and it's very freeing because it leaves me out of the guesswork. It just says, well, of course we're going to create buy-in because everyone's going to be part of the creation process. So
Mm.
how much more likely are they going to be to engage in a game that they actually created with us? So that process piece feels so much more aligned with community building rather than service. So I mean, I know earlier shows that we've spoken about, like spoken to each other, with each other around,
Hmm.
talked about service, and there was just like always this weird energy, like when I heard the word service, even though I've been a public servant since I was born, and I love that energy. There's something in that word alone in itself that's transforming for me and evolving into community. So I feel like, in essence, the word community is so much stronger than the word charity or service in a way. So,
Hmm.
and maybe what's really transforming is the word charity, because I think service is still a beautiful, beautiful word. Um, but I think showing up in service with others rather than for others is what community is about. So. yeah, so thanks for starting off the energy in that way. It's just
Right.
the evolution of this is just it's organic, and it's one meditation at a time, one guided word at a time. So community
Hmm.
is such a great word. So thanks for making the show about it.
Yeah, it's something that's really spoken to me this week. So it's something I wanted to talk about. As I am building a community garden in my local community and trying to reach, get my neighbors to talk to one another and, really create that the original sense I think of community is like your immediate neighbors all like pitching into to life, really, I guess. And we kind of I've seen in society this kind of drift away from that to where you go years without knowing your neighbor.
Mm.
And so, how do we start getting some of that back? And Jay, one of the things that I was really interested in hearing about is how you were able to take these workshops and everything that you're doing and bringing that to the community that you live in by what you're doing in the city of Fort Lauderdale and everything.
Um, so there's a lot of things that run through my mind when Eric was talking about that and trying to keep it focused on how dads do things with this. Where's the
Hmm.
dad's role in community? And maybe it's in. So I mean, I'll talk a second about. Sorry, I was just hunting for something I was writing this morning that just really went right in line with what we were talking about. I just wanted to pull it up, but I'll find it in a minute. But what if the issue is that it's up to us to create the community at home, and you know sometimes I don't get the sense that families are communities. I get that they all are just roommates. That we're all here. And the idea is to feed them and send them off here and there. But the sense of community is really different, right, Eric? I mean, that changes everything about the environment. You could live in a town or you could live in a community.
Mm.
Town, you could show up and do your stuff and you just happen to rub elbows with people doing their stuff. Or you could be part of people who pay attention together about what goes on. And now maybe it's just really nuanced in or a semantic difference, but I think you're right, Eric, on this comment. I mean, this focus on community. How is it different than where really any of us are?
Mm.
And I find that technology can do a very good job. You would think that it has the potential of making community a good thing or an easy thing. The ability to connect with people in a meaningful way, like the community that we have as Modern Dad on the Modern Dad Council, that technology can bring us together. But technology also has a big hand in keeping us away from community. That
Right.
if you look at your family, you can see five people all in the same space having no sense of community at all. Exactly, Chris. Yeah, I'm in community with somebody else at the moment, when that's really not true. They're just in conversation with somebody. But so I wonder if that the things that we're trying to do here, just to call it out, just to shine the light on it, to say, okay, dads, what's your role in ensuring that community happens where you go? How do you become somebody who lights up community? And that means it has to be part of your language. It has to be part of your thinking, right? So
Hmm.
what are you doing to create a community at home? What are you doing to create a community in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city? And um, what's different about it? And I think connection, the intentional spending time with who the other person really is, not who I need them to be, kind of thing, where it's experiential. I'm moving through this with you. Let me share this real quick. So, Ready for Life has got shifted a little bit because now we're much more about the parent than the. We're eventually going to get to the kids, but we want to get to the kids through the parents. So we shifted Ready for Life to Get Your Kids Ready for Life, and that's really our focus of our podcast. I had this woman on yesterday who the show won't air for a couple more weeks. Her name was Kimberly Travellino, and Kimberly lived in Delray Beach, big house, couple of cars, successful life, kids, affluent school, and decided that didn't want that life. So she and her husband, 5 years ago, sold everything, bought an RV, and they have been on the road for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
How
and she
cool.
started this group called Full Time Families because she wanted a community She wanted the sense of community with her kids, where she didn't just drop them off at school and pick them up when most of their day she had no contact with them. She wanted full time with them. So they have 4 kids, 3 dogs, 2 parents, and they live in 350 square feet. And they go around the country, just not always fine, you know. It's what family is always fine, but they fully experience, they're in community with each other all the time. Now, part of that's the proximity. You know, when you have 350 square feet, that you're in each other's space. But they experience an event together. That's what just floored me. And this poor woman got such strong pushback from her families. They said, "You're kidding me. All that you have strived to get, you got. And now you're going to get rid of it and do what? Be a gypsy? You didn't go to college to be a gypsy. You didn't get married and work this hard in this company to be a gypsy." And it was that they understood for them what made them happy and what made them tight as a family. So, you know, it's just funny at this, the synergy of how it all happens. But here are people who are doing community, and they're building community. Now they meet up with other people who are living their life this way, and that's their community. They stay in touch with them. They do these meetups. They travel the globe. They come back. They share stories. It's someone who says, "I should do this." So I guess, sorry for the long version of all this, but you know, maybe the challenge to dads in this is, what is your role for or to create community, first at home and then wherever else you are? You know, how do you do it in the workplace? How do you do it in your true community? But at minimum, what's the community you create at home? So I don't know if Chris, went anywhere close to what you're asking me about. How do we build community in the workshops we have? So
no, you're fine.
But
it's perfect. I mean, you really hit on a lot of really good questions there. I mean, and so, you know, just kind of talk about the, you know, the things that we got the community garden in my neighborhood. And then I go to my daughter's school and I find that there is a dad's organization that the principal put together. You know, that's a way that he's tried to create community within the school, giving the parents a reason to come to school, creating an event. And the thing is that what I found in this is that he didn't do make a huge effort to create this a big, gigantic, enormous, amazing thing. He just said, "Hey, let's meet this Wednesday to talk about how we can volunteer at the school as men." That was it. And in doing that, created this community of guys that come to the school, they volunteer, and they make an impact on the greater community as a whole by their influence with the kids and everything else. The things that we're doing here, you know, each one of us have our own little projects that we're doing. So my thought for this conversation is, like, how can we challenge the dads out there to step up and find a way to create some sort of community and be unique in that community. You know, or not necessarily that you have to be unique, but find your passion in everything else and create something around that, because all it really takes is somebody to go first.
Well, and I feel like, you know, that's the other fun part about, you know, just even the Game Changer world right now, is that along with this video game project, you know, what is alive and in your inboxes, specifically yours, and, like Jay and Chris, is the Game Changer Pledge, you know, and how we live into the Game Changer Pledge is our own individual, you know, contribution to building community or rebuilding community with our families first. So I mean, you know, just kind of changing the lens, you know, and just take something that's global, because everyone's going to be doing it, right? You know, so like as this unfolds, and much like the Ice Bucket Challenge just goes viral, you know, like, how do we make it our own, and how do we create the community around those 2 hours a week? You know, like, how are you going to spend your 2 hours, and how is your sharing around those 2 hours gonna build community in your neighborhood, and how is that gonna build community in your society? You know, and what are those ripple effects? And so I feel like that's you know, I mean, and I've been on a Seth Godin kick for quite some time, and just the idea that we can find our tribe in a place other than our geography,
Right.
Is a pretty amazing opportunity. And so, like, you know, when I see kids playing video games, they're in community, and we need to, like, you know, say, like, you know what, you're right, you found community. It might not be the community that we wished for you, but you found community, and now we know that community is really important for you. And so now dads get to step up and say, maybe you can try on this community, you know, and I'll try it on with you. And I think that word "with," and know that word "with," is really important. So I mean, that's you know, like, we live in a constant micro macro world where everything that we do in our home, you know, has ripple effects in the world, and everything that happens in the world has ripple effects in the home. And because of the platforms that we have constant access to, I mean, I just learned from my kids that I am now, you know, the preferred household because I've got Wi-Fi and their mom's house doesn't, and it's the first time that it's, like, you know, that it's gone in this direction. And you know, like, in a way, I wish that they chose my household as the right household because it's got dad there. You know?
Right. For your Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Right. So like, I'm just humbly saying that, like, I get it. Like, their sense of community, their sense of connection is incumbent upon having Wi-Fi. And so so I think our role as dads is to first identify and be in the awareness and say, look, you found it. You found community. Now let's just see if that's the right community. You know, like, let's check in and really say, like, are these the people you want to surround yourself with? Like, do you know who Steel 152 is, you know, in your gaming system? You know,
Right.
like, you know what their values are? Do you know what they're really about? Is that the community you really want to be intentional about creating? Or is there something that we can intentionally expose our kids to, you know, through shared experience that can be more aligned with the community they really, really want, or we really want to share with them? So I'm excited about that.
Very cool. That's one of the things that you were talking about is that sticks out to me is that to pick the community that we want to be in, or to check ourselves to make sure that are these the people that I want to be around, or that I want to be surrounding myself with. And sometimes, you know, because a lot of what I say, or I feel like I say, is like, you know, go start something. I challenge you to create, but there isn't always the necessity to create, and oftentimes it's just about reaching out and looking for the resources that are there around you and finding some things that might already be happening that you can join and elevate.
Mm-hmm.
So that really stuck out with what you were saying to me, and that being open to other things that are going on, instead of, for me, always feeling like I have to create it myself or make something new. So that was an interesting thought process that came up.
Funny, what came to mind when I was listening was, Deepak Chopra's words kind of run in my head a lot, of attention and intention. You know, the ability for us to pay attention, like you're talking about, Chris. What's here, or what's missing from here? You know, that if I could watch, then I would see who is trying to do something that makes sense for me, or I'm looking for something but I'm not finding it, but I at least am paying attention, and I'm paying attention with the intention of finding a place to show up in a more significant way to a community. You know, my oldest sister lives up in Hingham, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, in South Shore. she's in that for its sense of community. They've been there for 25 years, and they changed wherever they were living so it would be part of a town that they knew was all about its sense of personal community. The town knows who it is, and people live there to be part of it. So it's the attention, where is this happening, and the intention, hey, what is it like to be part of this community? We do a lot together, we support each other, we pay attention to our money, we make sure our schools are great. You know, they have just really focused on being a really great community. So to me, that same wisdom happens everywhere. You know, what is it we pay attention to at home, and what is it we intentionally create at home to be a stronger family community? What do we do and step into our schools if we see that there's something not in place? You know, where is there the possibility for us to create something to build community? Or, you know, sometimes we're in need of community, sometimes we're ready to deliver community. So, you know, you may look around and say, you know, just based on whatever else is going on in my life now, I really need some community. You know, I need some place to feel like I fit and I belong and that I want to contribute. And that's the one that says, who started something that I could join that makes sense for me? Or the other one is, hey, I'm noticing my world and there's some things that are not in place that could be. Let me start something and build a community from there. So I think it could go in both ways. And I think it's really nothing more than, you know, how well do you know yourself and how well do you know your world? I come back to this all the time. I think it's just the play that, you know, the more self-aware you are about what's working and not working or where your greatest strengths are, and then looking at your world for its needs and its challenges and its opportunities and say, here's how I connect the two, I could then find something that filling in some of the holes for me, or me using what I do best to fill in someone else's holes. I was talking to one of the guests on the radio show program that I have. She is a spiritual counselor, and she said, it's funny, I'd heard it before, but I don't think it ever registered. She said, the gifts that you have are not for you. Who to use. And so what it is that you're great at isn't so you can see what you're great at, it's so that you can deliver something that someone else needs. That's why you have it. So your self-awareness creates the opportunity for you to show up and create community some other place by doing something that's truly in line with who you are. It floored me when I heard that. I'm like,
yeah, that's awesome.
Then I'm wondering how come I hadn't even thought about that before, but, you know, everything in its time.
Yeah.
So maybe the challenge, as we're talking about challenge and community today, that the challenge is for dads to look through and say, what's missing in you as a dad that someone could help fill so that you show up in a community? And then what could you do to inspire something to make a community stronger? Community at home, community at school, community about violent video games, community about, you know, just leadership, life leadership, or whatever, wherever your strength is. That don't do it only that you have to go out and do something. All that pressure on dads all the time. We got to do. Sometimes we got to scan through the world and find out what we get to be part of, because someone else is doing it and it fits us and it's just what we need.
Right. Yeah, that's beautifully said. I really like that quote.
Yeah.
How can you say that one more time? Because I want to write that down.
Probably not. That the gifts that we have in life are not for us. They're for us to deliver to somebody else. So others benefit from the gifts that we have more than we benefit from. So we're here to use the gifts in the service of others.
Wow.
And you know, I think there's also, you know, when you talk about how you heard it almost as if it were the first time recently, even though you had probably heard it before, but didn't fully internalize it. I feel like we're all going through these moments at different times, you know, so like our evolution is ready for us, and like the second half of our lives is allowed to be totally different than the first half, you know, so like maybe we, you know, I mean, there's this other quote in this book, Radical Forgiveness, that talks about, you know, how we sort of experience the myth of separation for a certain amount of years, a certain amount of time on this planet, until we realize that it's totally a myth and we're all connected and we are here as part of a collective unit, and that that is the moment that we start our journey home, you know, and from like the deepest spiritual place, you know, where where else but in the word community do we realize how united we actually are in our uniqueness,
Yeah.
you know? So like, how do we bring the gifts that were born into me that I get to be in gratitude for, uh, to a larger purpose than just putting the food on my table. You know, like what is it? What do these gifts get to really look like if they are manifested on the platform that they were intended for? And I think that's that's the capital C community opportunity that we're in right now. So like here we are, the Modern Dads Council and Dad Council, and we are building a community of dads who are redefining everything. We're redefining community. We're redefining fatherhood. You know, this is not our father's fatherhood. You know, this is our own, and it's a really amazing evolution. And I love, Jay, when you talk about your family meetings at home. Like that's community building, like right there. You know, I mean, and how do we set an intention for what our family, you know, is about? I mean, one of the things that I remember from one of my early mentors is we talk about the days way back when, and he said, you know, back then when you talked about your last name, it was like Lehmans don't do this. Lehmans do this. This is how Lehmans show up. This is how the Petrillos family shows up, and the Petrillos family watches out for the, you know, the Sholeys, and like, you know, I mean, like that's how it works, and that's what community was, and so, you know, on a new platform, you know, we can do this digitally. You know, we just haven't figured that out yet. You know, right now we're in this like watchdog thing of like, you know, just, you know, kind of being like worried about the dangers of, you know, the internet. But what if we looked at, you know, internet as like a beautiful community that just, you know, really looked out for each other rather than just, you know, was afraid of danger. You know, so I mean, I don't know where that tangent's going, but I'm just saying that, like, you know, there's just so many different ways to redefine community and to join, even with our individuality. So like, it's just, you know, the folks who are creating these platforms, you know, we don't exist in a way if we don't come together first, and then if others don't join the conversation with us, you know, then we're having, I mean, then it's a men's group, you know. So our intention is to create community, you know, a community of dads who are challenging the old model of fatherhood and reinvesting in the new model, and knowing that it's a messy process along the way, and, you know, all these fun things. So and reclaiming our partner. I mean, like our power in it. And you know, I mean, I'm sort of in my own journey transforming from what they used to call the snag, like the sensitive new age guy, you know. And so like now I'm like, you know, now I'm spiritual, but I'm in my power, you know. I just, you know, I think with, you know, somewhat of a businessy head, you know, when I'm being spiritual, and I'm thinking spiritually even when I'm being businesslike. So I mean, I think it's just a matter of like bringing consciousness and intentionality to all these new terms. So I'm psyched for what we're up to.
Yeah, and I think Jay hit on that too, is that, I mean, it starts to bleed into everything that you do. It's not just a community at home or in your neighborhood, but it's also when you go to work, creating community at work. So, and I think, Eric, what you're talking about, having this business head, is you're able to, you've kind of grown into that, where it's like, okay, now I've created, with the community that I have, I'm tripping over my words here, with the community that I have, I'm learning how to create employment, basically, So in working with each other and everything that we're doing here and outside of here, or outside of this show, we're building a greater and greater community and learning how to, in doing that, create financial resources so that you can support your family and support your most local community by putting food in their mouths and clothes on their backs and just taking care of those needs.
So maybe this is what struck me, Chris, when you're talking is sometimes I have to say it out loud to finally get it. Sorry. That that the reason or that the benefit of community is, or the starting point for community is care, right? So if I don't care enough about the other people, then I don't really work towards community. So maybe this is a chicken or the egg thing. Does community create care, or does care create community? And so in Eric's comment about, well, if I could approach this with a mindset or a mindfulness approach to community, it's because I first care. And I'm creating the community no matter where I go because the value that built the community was one of care. The value of the virtue of care said, I look at the world through a caring lens, and because of that, community is one of my tools. I may look at the world and, I may have other tools that I get to use when I'm caring. So what does it take to create community? Well, it's a bunch of people who care. Well, how did you get someone to care? From the moment ago, they didn't care. And the reason why I asked this is this is what's come up lately in all my work at the Greatness Zone. So the last number of years, we've been touting this message of, greatness. Don't play small, go for the big thing. Identify what you're good at and show up and live boldly and live better. And we have very few people say, cool, let me do that. Because most people are really connected to the moment that they're in now, and that moment is loaded with things that just distract them from thinking that other thing is possible. And I was coaching a friend of mine who was trying to connect with people in a bigger way and finding that nobody was listening. Nobody was listening at all. And it's because the distance from where they were to where he wanted them to be was so great they couldn't get there. They couldn't see it as possible. And so I think, in understanding this, that to help people figure out what they care about is to meet them where they are. And where you are, you and I can have a conversation. Where I'd like you to be is too far from where you are, and we're not going to have that conversation. And it's taken me a long time to learn that the messaging that I need to go to eventually bring them along the road towards that greatness path isn't go there. It's where are you now, and what's the one thing you can do today to take a forward step? Just one. That's all. And see, you can see that that's the road, but you know what? Don't look too far down that road, because we're going to zig and we're going to zag, and you're not going to go in a straight line here. It's just the way it is. And you're okay with that. We'll all be okay with that, because your experience will be bigger. So if that's the case, what creates the community, I think, is for one of us to reach out and show someone what care looks like. Imagine if you reached out to one of your kids in a way that's different than the way that you normally do to show them that you care. Already you change that. You meet them where they are and you show that you care where they are. Instead of, here's what I need you to be, and when you're there, then I'll really be proud of you. Or all the situations that happen in the course of our dad days. But I think if we could then talk quickly about what does it take to care enough? What do you have to have from a mind and a heart perspective that you could look at the world and care enough in order to say, that's mine, I want to do something about it. Or I have something that will fix this, work on this, support this, help this. Who do we have to be that we be attentive enough to see it and intentional enough to want it? And in that moment, go do it. And I think that's where we are. The community is a great thing. Who do we have to be in community? And what does that take? And how might we as dads see that it's easier than we think it is? And maybe we just think it's more complicated, more just because me, talking about the greatness image all the time, and not that I don't want you to have it, but so many people think that's so far from where they are, when in fact that's exactly who they are. You know, the greatness shows up in the struggles. That's just what it does. Greatness doesn't mean perfection. It means tapping into what's right and best about you and doing that. But if people don't see that, then what we have to do is reframe the message. And I think to do that, we could make it easier for people just to care more. And in the caring, we would start to see more community.
And you know, I mean, just what's really powerful about what you just shared is that, you know, it's community is where you get to see and be seen. So, you know, and I think that's the whole point about even fatherhood and meeting someone where they are. It's the same with community building. If you meet someone from on high, you're a speaker, you're a facilitator, you're a trainer, you're not part of the community.
You're not like us.
Yeah. So, you know, and I think that's where, you know, I just came back from the National Speakers Association convention, and there's no time that is more clear, you know, in my heart that says speaking is changing. You know, there's a huge disruption that is about to happen in the speaker community, because I think we're getting globally bored of being spoken at and spoken to. And so I think it's time for us to speak with people and to build, and there's still you can still create sustainable incomes by holding that meeting.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that's the big fear that's going around. It's like, if I don't bring all of this content to the world, then how am I going to be able to feed my family? But the truth is, you know, like, the platform creators, you know, look at Airbnb, you know, look at Uber. They don't own a car, and yet they're the biggest taxi service. They own none of the content that they're promoting. And yet they are the ones who are making the exponential leaps into this world. So,
creating
you know,
massive disruption.
Right, right. So it's the folks who believe in community and just find that excess capacity and see the greatness that's been there all along, you know, and look at it from a different angle and build the community around that. And so, like, that's what really floats my boat around this word community. That, like, you know, the people who are soapboxes, you know, without a heart, you know, if they have a pre-recorded message, you know, that's a one-way communication, you can get that on YouTube. You can get that on Google. What the world needs right now is community and a sense of eye-to-eye, meet me where I'm at, full acceptance. Like, I see you, you see me, and we're all okay, you know? That's what community is going to really feel like when it's right. So, like, I have nothing against speakers. I'm a recovering one myself. You know, it's just that I feel like this word community is a really beautifully powerful disrupting force. Mm-hmm. You know, and because it's not going to look like the old community.
Yeah,
it's not. Like, you know, it's not going to be this tangible thing where you walk down the block and there's this, you know, there's a sign in the front of the community that says this is a neighborhood watch community, and, you know, it's going to be virtual, it's going to be tribe related, it's going to be Seth Godin, you know, global, and the nuances are still going to be figured out, but it's those who dare greatly, you know, to see and be seen. You know, like, I am so imperfect. And, you know, like, I am so willing to share how imperfect I am, and I'm willing to bring my gifts to the table of you know, what I was given, the tools I was given that I'm good with. And it's just going to be so much more fun to show up saying, oh, cool, you've got that gift, I've got this gift. Like, that makes us 1 + 1 = 3. So, you know, that's symbiotic and that's synergistic.
The other thing I like about all of this too, guys, is I think we're ushering in another period of I guess they're always ushering a period of change, right? But so we could pick any of the institutions and use this thinking. So we're talking families. So disrupt the family just means like the woman with the RV family. She just said, how do I want it to be so that my kids have the most significant experience of life? What is that community going to look like? And Eric, you and I talk about the college thing a lot. So, colleges are beginning to find out the same thing, that this online learning doesn't necessarily create community. What creates community is the ability to create an experience. The experience frequently needs the face-to-face or the value. So
those college parties. Sorry.
Okay. I don't think that's fully a joke. I think that's important too.
Yeah, it's so I have 3 daughters. My older 2 kids went to small New England colleges, and they have this tight community of friends that they have known since college. They do everything together still. My youngest daughter went to a big school down in Arizona, and has maybe 2 friends that she stays. This is a school with 70,000 kids. She has 2 friends that she stays in touch with. Something was different about their sense of community. When you went through the gates in these 2 colleges in New England, you were home. When your school is scattered all over the city, maybe you don't feel like that. Or maybe some do, maybe some don't. But I see just in watching that, what is the school's intention? And when the schools, the 2 New England schools, talk about their community of alumni on purpose, we get each other, we work together, we create things for each other, we're here for each other. And it just wasn't there in the bigger school. And so I think in all of these situations, there's the opportunity for us to do one of the 2 things: show up and fix it, or show up and be part of it. But the show up part is really important. And you show up to the things that matter to you. So my youngest daughter went to the school because she liked geographically where it was, so she didn't have to shovel snow, and and she could work on her tan. And she was there because the major was exactly what she wanted. But a lot of the rest of the community that I think she would have loved wasn't there for her. But on the other side, the other 2 went to schools where community really mattered. I went to a school. I had the opportunity of going to an Ivy League school that was scattered around the city, and it scared me to death. I didn't want to be there. But I went to a college that had a set of gates that I could drive through the front, so I knew when I was there. I wanted to be part of them. And the other one wasn't. Looked fine in the diploma, but that's not what I wanted. So I think as we start to do this, we get good at seeing for us how we show up to our communities. What are they? But I like the word, and I like it for parents, for dads, to talk to their kids. Where's your community? Who are people who believe what you believe? Who are people who love what you love? And now you start to identify the other places in your world of people who may in fact show up in the way that you do, so you feel part of something. A very good friend of mine is kind of the mouthpiece of the millennial generation. Great guy, writing books for them. He's a millennial and he speaks for them. And he says the biggest message that they want their parents to hear is, it's really lonely being me. Really surprised me. Really surprised me. And it's because he calls it OCD disorder, obsessive comparison disorder.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, obsessive comparison disorder. As a kid, I'm always compared to every other kid because of today's technology. You can't do anything without being, on display. And what it does, with the intention of creating community, Facebook creates all of these divisions where now some of the less significant behaviors or values show up in the community. Who has more? Who has what? Facebook is a one-upsmanship kind of thing sometimes, and the younger generations do that. So parents have to be vigilant and aware about who their kids are thinking of part of their community, part of their club, part of their tribe, and helping them see what else are the other choices. So if a kid is really into certain things, how do parents help them find community around people who are like them? If you're a cello player, then how do you feel part of the guild of cellists? Because for some reason you guys get it. You know, same if you're a gamer or if you're a cook, that there's something about that makes you feel alive. Then who are your people that are like that, so you can build your community? Sorry, I kind of went on and
No, it's
That was right on. I had like 3 thoughts through that process, so I'm kind of like, okay, which one do I want to talk about? But I think the biggest part that I get out of that is finding the community that fits you best, and being open to, you know, and then if that doesn't exist, creating it yourself. But you know, you're talking about going to college and really looking for the things that best suit you, because that big college might be the community that is right for some, and that small college might be the community that is better for others. So understanding more about yourself will help you to, you know, uncover those things. So I think that's the biggest challenge then, is helping to guide people down that path of self-discovery, you know, and really knowing who they are.
I think it's a tipping point, Chris, on everything. I mean, you can't move through your world unless you know who you are and what's going on in your world. And from that, all your information just shows up in front of you. And then you get that wonderful gift of saying, so, what do I want to do with this? Or, now what? Or, what would make this better? Or any of the questions that happen when you come to it from enough information. And trying to build community around the lack of information, I think, will just frustrate everybody.
Awesome.
You know, what's also interesting is, like, you know, I dive into the spiritual community a lot wherever I try to go, which is, you know, when you're on your way to Ohio State, you know, like, it's just really funny that, like, I just remember, like, oh, there was this great place to meditate, you know, like, so, like, I guess that's some of the community that I seek wherever I am. Like, you know, I look for places, you know, that are meditation friendly, and, you know, I find myself, you know, I mean, I was in the Albany airport once, and I saw this big sign that said, like, meditation room in the airport, and I was like, wow, like, that's, like, there's a spot for my tribe here, you know. And on the flip side, you know, then there's these people who are like, I don't know if I'm meditating right, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, it's just so interesting, like, this whole comparison thing. Like, you know, is my meditation as good as somebody else's? You know, I think that obsessive, you know, comparison, whatever, like, that's amazing. Like, it's an amazing reference point, because I feel like, you know, how can we show up as dads in that? You know, how do we get, you know, break through that layer of comparison? You know, like, what is, I mean, like, you know, when you were talking about these things, I was remembering all these bumper stickers that I saw, you know, during Parents' Weekend at Cornell, which is like, my kid and my money go to Cornell. You know, you know, my kid is an honor student, and then as you leave Ithaca about 15 miles away, you see up the bumper stickers that says, my kid beat up your honor student. You know, I mean, like, there's, you know, there's a whole bunch of different stuff, but it's all, like, you know, comparison and interesting identity formation stuff. So how do we raise our kids with a sense of community and their own sense of identity within that community? You know, I mean, so, like, you know, without comparing them to anyone else, and just celebrating for the unique gifts that they bring to the table, and not subjecting them to perhaps the comparison that we were subjected to. You know, I mean, just to finish the thought, like, I was a geek, you know, and a nerd, and it was hard to be a geek and a nerd when I was, you know, in school. And then all 3 of my kids are, in essence, geeks and nerds, and it's awesome for them to be geeks and nerds right now, and I'm so happy that they, like, you know, like, the word weird is a compliment in my household. I'm like, you're weird, I know, you know, like, that's awesome, you know, like, it's just so great to, like, you know, just span one generation and go from, like, you know, getting the wedgie and being, you know, kind of pulled up on a locker to, like, oh yeah, and the geeks will inherit the earth, you know, kind of thing.
That reminds me of that. What is it? 21 Jump Street Part 2 or 22 Jump Street, I think it's called. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. But,
Oh, okay. So they go to college, and they had gone to college already, and so now they're going back to college instead of high school like they did in the original movie. But the guy is Channing Tatum. He's the buff like jock type, and then you got like the other kid. I can't think of the actor's name, but he's kind of chubby and kind of nerdy kid. And they go to high school, and it's like, who's the cool people? It's the geeks and the things, and the jock's the one that everybody's making fun of and everything else, and he's struggling more than anybody to fit in, which is hysterical. But
I mean, I
I
think
just
it's
really hit on what you said,
I think it speaks to the power of community too. I mean, how are we creating healthy and supportive communities, not communities that take each other down, the nerdy types and the sports types, Because there was a community of nerds. I was in that same too. We were the smart kids. That was because we weren't that athletic. So, it seemed one community or the other, and one was better than another. And how do we start looking at community as community? Ways to find places where you fit, and all of it's fine. You just need to be with people who, are tight believing what you believe, and appreciate that others get to have that too. And then there isn't a good community and bad community. There's community, and I know we're all of this mindset that says, "Gee, I wish that could happen," but we just have to wait it out, I guess. But I think it's fair to hold the space for it, that it could look like this, and then we won't be so quick to give up.
Right. Yes, sir. And I love our community. This has been a blast, doing the Modern Dad Council and having all of us come here each week. I know the past couple of weeks have been kind of crazy. I haven't been able to join, but thank goodness that Tommy was able to host last week and get something out. So that was I'm really grateful for that, and grateful for this community that's come together of you guys. And so thank you for that, and thank you for listening. And we'll talk to you guys next week.